Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to 89.5 WAHS Auburn Hills. I am Mitchell Payne, and today I have a very special guest with me. Hello.
Hello?
Would you like to introduce yourself there, sir?
Sure thing. My name is Jason Medcoff, otherwise known as Jorts. I'm an electronic musician local to the Detroit area.
So, as with every starting artist, I always have to almost immediately ask, where did your name come from?
That's a long story. So that's an unfortunate nickname that comes from, believe it or not, Bandcamp. You know, we don't talk about Bandcamp. But, yeah, it comes from my freshman year when a few of my upperclassmen decided to give me a nickname based on my choice in wardrobe. And it just sort of stuck.
Very interesting, very interesting. And then, so you have been producing music for how long?
Longer than longer than I can keep track of, really. I mean, seriously, for probably about 5 or 6 years now.
Okay. And then, so before that, you were just kind of,
Just messing around
You were
and
just
that
kinda
sort
like-
of stuff.
yeah, hey, audio is cool, and just playing with it. And so, what do you use primarily for making stuff?
Software wise,
Mhm.
all right. So I pretty much primarily work out of Ableton Live.
Okay.
I fell in love with the workflow and kind of never looked back. You know, you get used to the keyboard shortcuts and just the
Yeah.
fast workflow, and it's great.
Yeah, I'm a FL Studio user myself, so just the fact is like, yeah, once you get used to that one thing and you look at the other and you're just like, yeah, it's not for me.
Yeah, you can try to get into other stuff, but
Mhm.
you always fall back to you fall back to what works.
Yeah, just the thing you know and love. But now you have been working on a new album here, Delta Method. Where has that come from? How has your style, I suppose, shifted to make this new album that you have here?
Yeah. So for the last several years, I've mostly been putting out singles and a lot of remixes.
Mm-hmm.
But recently, I sort of, I felt like my music has reached the point where I would feel proud to release a coherent album.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 10 tracks, all complete originals. And the time span of when they were made kind of goes back like 2 years or so. But they're all, very polished tracks and whatnot. So, it's music that I feel proud of,
Yeah, certainly. I know that feeling. It's like even like the very first stuff that you kind of release and like you're kind of proud of, but then you listen to like actual music and you're like, wow, there's a huge difference between me and them. But yeah, I mean, it seems like now you're approaching that line between where you're kind of realizing you're on like the same like levels that a lot of other producers are on. So now you're like, yeah, this is like music. Like people would listen to this.
Yeah. I mean, personally, for me, music is, like producing music is always a journey. Like I don't think anyone can ever attain like, perfection, so to say. But the very fact that you can make something and then, go and listen to another record per se and then decide, wow, you know what? That's really cool. I can improve myself further so that I'm on that level. You know?
So why don't we go ahead and listen to one of these songs and kind of give everyone listening a feel for what it is that you do. So the one that you said was kind of like not the flagship, but really like the personal highlight for you is this next song we're going to be playing called Vector Space. Now, before we actually get into it, the fact that you mentioned that this was kind of the one that you were like really proud of, why is that?
Yeah, so this one I spent a lot of time on. A lot of time on. More time than I usually spend on tunes. And it also sort of highlights a new sort of production technique that I've been utilizing recently that also kind of influenced the title of the album.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, I've been because eventually, like, because with my own music making, I ended up in a place where I realized, these are like, yeah, like you said, like little production techniques that you kind of attach yourself to. So we'll kind of have to listen to the song and discuss what that is, because I'm interested in, whenever I'm on the radio, I love talking about the technical stuff in a way that kind of makes sense. So without further ado, this is Vector Space by Jorts. And that was Vector Space.
Indeed, it was.
Indeed, it was. Well, that was quite the high energy roller coaster. For me personally, a lot of the music that I end up like listening to is just like so laid back. But like I do love that high intensity, and it's hard. I know because like I've tried to do it, and it's really hard to achieve that high intensity, very fast beat without it just sounding stupid. You know?
Yeah.
So you were talking to me a little bit about how it is that you went about. You were talking about that first drop especially, and how it had that cut up, glitchy feel. So kind of explain what was your process, and why did you do the things you do, and how did you get to that end point?
Yeah, so I've sort of been doing the whole complex thing for quite some time. I was sort of introduced to it a few years ago with like James Egbert and Porter Robinson, those kind of guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, holy crap, man, that's so cool. So I've sort of, started trying to figure out how to do it on my own. And the sort of big deal with this track in particular is it sort of represents a new technique, a new style, if you will, of how I went about making this sort of glitch.
Mm-hmm.
The technique, what I would do is in Ableton, in the software I'm using, I would loop like only a small section of time. Here it was a quarter note, so I'd loop just a quarter note's worth of time, and then make different sounds, grab some samples, whatever, and sort of create just a 1/4 note length idea, and then render that idea to audio, and leave it on an audio track during that section. And then I would move the loop to the next quarter note length and do some completely different idea.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of, going section by section in time rather than by instrument. So the result is, a sort of method where it's more focused on quick changes and quick cuts between different sections of time. And the title of the album comes from that. In physics and engineering, we say that a delta represents a change in some quantity. So when I say delta, I mean that every change in time interval, every quarter note, every half note, is something different, something unexpected, which gives it that sort of glitchy feel, to the listener.
See, I love naming conventions like that actually have like some real like thought behind them, and like, yeah, this is so cool and this represents something. And I was like, yeah, I just called it this because it sounded cool. I just called it like the dog because it's whatever, it's a dog. So I really like that. And I think there's in our electronic producing especially, there's so much you can do with each and every instrument, having so much control over literally every frequency in the entire spectrum is just a luxury not afforded to other styles of music. So I think, instead of trying to pack a whole bunch of different instruments all at the same time and having them all just like sit together in like a crowded box for 8 bars, the fact that you were able to make each its nice own thing and then really quickly give them their own pieces all right next to each other in a way that sounded good.
Thank you.
Good. I really liked it personally, so I will for sure be featuring that in the Pendulum Show, and people who know the Pendulum Show, you can look forward to that music after it is released, because at this moment, all of these songs are in fact sneak peeks because this music is not officially released. When will it be released?
This album will be coming out on Friday, June 2nd, 1 week from today.
Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be on Bandcamp, correct?
Yeah, so I chose the Bandcamp platform because I really like the way it's geared towards independent artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not crazy about the idea of releasing with labels or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's too much red tape and it's just people to deal with that I don't want to do.
That.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the Bandcamp platform. I've sort of been following it for a while, and a lot of my favorite artists use it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I decided, why not? We'll give it a try, jump in.
Yeah, one of my previous favorite artists, F777, he just releases all of his stuff through Bandcamp. So yeah, it's like a platform I'm familiar with, and I'm pretty sure I even have an account there. But I mean, I don't have to use it. I'm not in a place to be able to sell anything. But it is definitely geared towards those independent artists. So I'm assuming if somebody finds you on SoundCloud, because that is a thing that you have. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm following you, and we chatted a little bit sometime before. So if you go on to SoundCloud and you just search up Jorts, or even if you put into the link, it's www.soundcloud.com/jortswubs.
That's correct.
And is that Wubs with an S or Wubs with a Z?
Wubs with an S.
Oh, just an S. Okay, I was really hoping you'd go for the full, really getting that Wubs in there.
Not all the way now.
Not quite willing to risk that too much. Okay, I respect that. So this next song, we had a little bit of a fun time getting this into the system just because of the unique way that you named it. So why don't you kind of preface that for us?
Okay, so the song is called Omega Automaton, and I guess the way that I have it, the way that I had it named, I'm even having trouble with it.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I had it named was with the actual Greek letter omega, which I guess your system didn't really like.
Yeah, I remember when I started making music, because my whole thing was like alpha core. I thought at the time, because I was younger, that the lambda symbol was the actual alpha symbol. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to use that and it's going to be super cool. But no, the lambda is just like the L. So in my logo, it's not alpha core, it's just like alpha core. But I had to change it back. But I mean, yeah, I super love using those older letters. And math and computer science, which is what you're going into, correct?
Yep, Omega Automaton is a reference to theoretical computer science. Not that I'll, give you a lecture right now or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what I'm studying at Oakland University. Computer science major and an applied mathematics minor.
Yeah,
I'm
so
really loving it.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll be able to draw some connections, obviously, because making an album, you do your best to make sure that it's all kind of similar but still different. And so I think with your naming, and I've listened to some of it, and it's definitely got that feel for it. So we're going to go ahead and play that. This is Omega Automaton by, again, the one and only Jorts. That was Omega Automaton by the one and only Jorts, who I have with me. Don't forget, you are listening to 89.5 WAHS Auburn Hills. Apparently, the only station really in the area that plays electronic music, so I'm happy that we are able to appease that for you all today.
Me too. It's kind of, it is kind of difficult to find good music on the radio these days, you know.
Yeah.
I don't like to, I don't like to bash radio stations or whatever. I know they're just trying to appeal to the masses. But, I mean, it is difficult. I spend a lot of my time as a result listening to like the classical and jazz station. That's a good one.
Well, I think I can kind of I can feel a little bit of that heavy jazz syncopation, especially like through the start of that song. The beat isn't like totally synced up, and just the way that the plucks are with that kind of distorted ambient feel of them to start out the song, and it's all very spacey and trancy.
Oh yeah, that's another big influence. Sort of a lot of the first electronic music that I listened to was we've all heard electronic music, right? But a lot of the the first this one will bake your noodle. The first drum and bass tune you ever heard was the intro theme to the Powerpuff Girls.
Was that a drum and bass song?
It was a drum and bass tune.
I super vaguely remember it. Now that you said it, I'm gonna have to go back and give that a look.
Yeah, so, surprise, you've heard electronic music from a very young age, probably.
The drum and bass, yeah. And we were talking a little bit about something that I personally love, and I wouldn't say that I'm working on an album, but I guess it's kind of like an EP of like 5 or so things. But it kind of takes something that you were doing in that, which was downsampling audio. So to kind of talk about that, so what does it mean to downsample something?
Okay, so digital audio is an approximation of an analog signal. Sound as it is compression waves of air that we then process through our eardrums as sound, right? So what we do is, as is the case with the microphones that we're speaking into, what happens is the mechanical waves of the compressed air hits a membrane of some sort, and that membrane is attached to an electromagnet, and that thus produces a current that goes, all the way into the mixing board and whatnot as an electrical signal. When that electrical signal, which is alternating current, has both positive and negative polarity, when that signal is, entered into a digital computer, it's approximated as a digital signal, because computers are finite, right? They're imperfect.
Yeah.
So you can't represent a pure analog signal in perfect fidelity. So you take what are called samples. Essentially, you look at small time intervals on the signal, and you read their amplitude at that time. So digital audio has sort of 2 resolutions: bit depth and sampling rate. The sampling rate or sampling frequency is sort of like how, it's how frequent the sampling that I just described occurs. So if you have a digital signal and you actually artificially reduce the time interval, or you enlarge the time interval over which these samples are taken, you get much more sort of sharp edges on the signal, amplitude-wise, and that results in a lot of higher frequencies starting to appear, and it gives that sort of distorted, like video gamey sort of sound,
Yeah, and I love that sound. I think I guess maybe it's probably not the best thing for when I'm trying to mix something, but if I have like a vocal or something, because vocals inherently aren't super hissy, especially like a lot of the vocals that I use are kind of like vintage, so they're just already kind of really low in those higher frequencies. So I just love applying downsampling to them to kind of give that higher frequency bit to them. And so in any of my music that shows up, it is a way that kind of fills up those higher frequencies, because I'm just not the biggest fan of cymbals in general. I don't know what it is, like when trying to make a beat, I just don't like them as much.
You gotta leave them in the background. That's the key.
Yeah.
If you're having them going, if you have busy cymbal parts, you gotta leave them in the background. You almost gotta sidechain them to the kick. That's what I usually do.
Yeah. At least, yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, even I'm like learning stuff right now. You know, how's that feel? Because when I'm sure anyone's listening to the station, they're like, "Oh, here's that Mitchell kid coming at us with more weird technology stuff." But I'm actually learning right now, so this is great. So your process for something that I found most kind of frustrating as a roadblock for me was, you know, you can create some tunes and melodies that are great, but then you realize how important mixing and mastering is to making your audio not awful. So what was like your experience like in trying to make this album sound good on everyone's speakers and being kind of uniform in that way?
Yeah, so I agree with mixing being a very tricky sort of,
Frustrating and not fun part of it.
yeah. I wasn't focusing so much on making everything loud, the loudness wars and all that stuff. I don't believe in that.
The loudness war.
I don't, I believe that people, if they like music, they will listen to it, regardless of whether it's louder or not. And I think Spotify, I think they just like lowered, they just changed something with regards to like their like replay gain or something like that.
Oh.
So that's, replay gain. A lot of MP3 players have it. I think iPods do too. It's a technology by which like successive songs will, appear to have the sort of same volume when there's, huge differences between like two different songs, for example. That's sort of technology meant to correct the loudness wars almost, right? So like iTunes have implemented that technology. I think Spotify has for a while, and they just made some big change with it. But, I mean, it's a loss in audio fidelity. It's really, it's doing more harm than good. And like I said, I believe people will, people should judge their taste in music based on more than how loud it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, overall, like, your music does seem to have, like, a consistentness because, if you don't have, like, any compression at all, then you can kind of feel a lot of the volume just going all over the place when maybe it shouldn't. But so for your drums, they seem to be, you found, like, the perfect range between being overly compressed, loud all the time, just smashing 0 dB, and not having anything at all. So it seems like you, especially with all of your computer sciencey stuff, have kind of figured out the best solution to doing all that. Speaking of all the computer science stuff, how do you find that with the schooling that you're going through right now and the fact that you've been doing music for so long, do you find that making music has really inspired your choice of career paths? And do you find that one is kind of helping you like in another area? Like as you learn more about music, does it help you with the other and vice versa?
Yeah. So, I mean, actually, earlier on, I sort of got interested in the idea of programming, developing from the ground up VSTs and like,
Really?
software instruments and effects and stuff like that. It's, I mean, when you're working with like software and audio, you need to be really optimized though, because you're writing code that's being called, I don't know, 48,000 times a second. So, it was a little tricky, and I sort of fell out with it. I've been interested in other stuff since then, but I'd like to go back into that field and sort of re-explore the idea of developing software geared towards audio.
Yeah, I really hope you become the next Steve Duda. He was the guy who had released Serum, and that was like a super big deal in like the audio world, and that's become like a staple of especially like bassier music, being really good there. So I love, not just the straightforward, like, here's a sine wave, here's a triangle wave. I mean, like, I love those sounds to death when they're just by themselves, but I love seeing all the weird ways that you can play with audio. So I think there's, no better way to do that than really that kind of designing it all from the ground up, like you say.
Yeah. Serum is pretty groundbreaking. I like it. And Steve Duda's cool too. I've actually emailed back and forth with him a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's very cool. He's very down to earth. I mean, he's an engineer. He's a geek. He's one of my kind.
My kind, the geeks unite. I think that's just kind of the way that we gravitate towards making electronic music, and just the fact that we have like this perfect control over it, and it's all the technology stuff and all the fancy buttons and wires and reading meters. And I personally just love that, because I had tried playing, real instruments for a while, and so they really helped me with like the music theory, but then I realized I loved the theory more than I actually did love the playing. So did you just like start out hearing electronic music, or did you kind of slowly trail into making it? Like, how did you really get started?
Yeah. Before we get into that, I just wanted to drop another comment on what you said. I mean, applying the theory to composition rather than playing instruments is, it's actually not all that uncommon. John Mackey, who's a famous modern composer of classical music, actually went to Juilliard, I think, and he praises the institution because he's a composer, he's very talented, and yet he doesn't really play any instruments. Yeah, so I mean, it's not, it's not a totally uncommon thing. As for me, music-wise, my journey started very young with piano lessons, as it tends to for a lot of people. I stopped after 5 or 6 years, which I kind of regret a little bit. I wish I had put a little more effort into it, but it's, all is not lost. I mean, it was around that time that I was sort of exposed to production. My uncle in California is a studio engineer. Like he does recording for a career, and he does stuff, he's done stuff with all kinds of people. He's written, scores for like independent films. He's done jingles for commercials, all sorts of stuff. He records, independent artists, all sort of cool stuff. And so he's sort of, watching him, produce on his, silly little MacBook setup while we were at my grandmother's house, sort of showed me, that you can make music like fully enclosed on a computer. And so that was the sort of period when I started, dabbling in it, just sort of on and off. I wasn't a whole, I wasn't really committed to it. But then later on, like while I was in high school, I was sort of exposed a bit more to electronic music because of a colleague in one of my classes.
Okay.
And it was at some point, I don't remember exactly when, but I listened to a record. It was Satellite by Ocean Lab. And Ocean Lab was sort of a short-lived group by Above and Beyond, who you might have heard of, who's a trance group based out of Britain. And Ocean Lab was a project that they did with a vocalist. And Satellite, which was a track off of their first and only album, as far as I know, it's just like a beautiful, beautiful track. And I thought, holy crap, I need to start doing this. So I did. A lot of my early work, when I was serious, was more in trance and that sort of area. Then comes the funny part. Every story's got a funny part. So it was during, I think, my second year of high school. I had a buddy named Joe Marsala, and at some point I had found out that he was also doing this sort of music stuff, right?
Oh, okay.
But he was more influenced by Deadmau5, so he was going down like this sort of techno, like tech house route. But it was around this time that we discovered that we were both producers, that dubstep was coming in, was coming into the scene. So, we started bouncing tracks back and forth, and it was a very prolific and very rewarding time to be producing. When you have another friend who does the same thing and you can just bounce ideas back and forth, do collaborations with all kinds of freedom because you live nearby and stuff like that. That was good. I learned a lot during that time period.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I think based on like the music we've heard so far, it feels like you have really taken that inspiration from those multiple fields that you've done. Like I can still feel those trancey, those really heavy lush pads in a lot of the music. And then you bring that into that kind of like electro techno-y territory for more like the drops. And it seems like you've kind of created this perfect balance of of not like forgetting, I guess, where you totally started, but still being able to play with all these new tricks that you've kind of discovered along the way. And I guess with the song that you said you really loved was Satellite, was that kind of where some of the spaciness came from? Because this next song we're going to jump into is totally a space reference. So
Yeah. So Satellite, Satellite was a good record, and it was sort of the gateway record. It's not really spacey on its own, but it's very melodic. And so after listening to it, I sort of hunted, for other stuff sort of along the same lines, along the same melodic lines. And that's when I sort of started getting into the more, atmospheric, like dream trance and all the big lush pads and everything.
Well, we're going to go ahead and play some of this. This is going to be Stargazing by Jorts. I feel like that song would have really fit so much better if we just for some reason had an open ceiling in this studio. I
Oh
could
yeah.
just like sit here at like 2 a.m. in the morning because I love being here, especially when it's later, and just to really get that stargazing on, which was the name of that song.
Yeah, the working title, like the name of the project file was Astral Plane, but towards the end I figured that was, a little too cerebral for
There's like a certain point where you're like, all right, now this is getting too ridiculous. I have to bring the names back in.
yeah, exactly.
So how much so your folder of like all your saved things that you're kind of working on, like how big is that folder? How much do you do and totally just let go? How do you decide what's going to be a thing, what's not going to be a thing? What's the process? I know it's painful.
The
I know.
the folder of unreleased material. Oh boy. So, yeah, I mean, when I start a project, I generally have a good idea of whether it's going to like blossom into, a full song or not. A lot of the times, I'll just open up software just with the idea of noodling around and, either making a sound that I can use later or making a melody or a chord progression that I can use later, but, I mean, when I have an idea for a track, I have an idea for a track, you know what I mean? When I have an idea for a track, I start a project file and I know that that's going to keep going. That's going to keep developing.
So like at what threshold do you cross before it's become, I'm just like memeing around and playing with the digital workspace that I'm in, before you realize like, wait a second, this could be a thing? Like, are there any elements that you probably don't even think about it too much, but are there any elements that you kind of pick up where you then realize, all right, this can really be a song, like I can work with this?
Yeah, so the one of the trickier things for me is coming up with like memorable melodies. Like
Yeah,
chord
definitely.
chord progressions, sit me down in front of a piano and I can go all day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I sit down and I get like a memorable melody, that's generally when I know that I can transform it into a tune. So like
Okay.
that last song, Stargazing, that we just listened to,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of big, super sa da da da, like that melody, like it was that's, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I come up with comes at very ill-opportune times. But that one was fortunate because it was sort of like I'd just woken up at like 7 a.m. on a Saturday or something like that, and I thought of that and I was like, oh, that's good, so I just like run over, turn on the computer and track it down, and
Just throw it
then
in there.
and then just go take a shower and come back to it later.
Yeah, I'll end up cause I've got like a piano in my room. Yeah, so like I'll just like sit on there and just keep hitting keys, and I'm like, wait, I just hit the wait, I gotta write this down somewhere, and then so I can always come back to it later.
Yeah, I've also recently picked up classical guitar, so
Oh.
so I can be doing that too. I mean, it serves itself really well for inspiration
Mm-hmm.
when you can sort of switch instruments on the fly, right? I mean, if you're composing an electronic piece, your sort of first instinct is to sit in front of the keyboard with a synth sound, right?
Yeah.
But instead, if I'm not feeling it, then I can pull out the guitar and get some sort of an inspiration there by either, arpeggiating a chord progression or just sort of soloing for a little while, And you can, loop the electronic tune, on the computer, play it out on the speakers, and just sit there with the guitar and, try and find something that works.
Mm-hmm.
That actually happened with one of the tunes on the album called Chimes.
Oh yeah. Okay. So we'll definitely play that one next up then.
Yeah, so that one has sort of a brief, acoustic guitar riff to it. But, I think it fits well.
And so how do you find that like, so you don't just actually do you just like record the actual sound of it, or do you play with like your guitar and then figure out what you want to do and then find like a guitar sound on the computer and then try to match it up that way?
That varies. I mean, it's kind of tricky to find good emulations of
Yeah.
guitar, especially because of all the nuances of playing with, the sounds of fretting and,
Mhm.
fingers moving across strings and whatnot. This one I just recorded, just took a raw input and then applied, I think, a little bit of reverb, and that was it.
Oh,
You know?
sweet. Yeah, because it's always very difficult for me to, that's why even having like a little MIDI keyboard that you can plug into is at least super helpful for at least kind of getting that, emulating the humanness of those, like the guitars and the pianos. Because once you're going to go into that actual real territory, like nobody knows what a synth is supposed to sound like. You can make it sound like whatever you want. That's the whole point. But if you hear a piano and it sounds like it's being played by a robot who has perfect timing and is hitting every key at the exact same velocity, it just doesn't sound right. So trying to give it that human element is pretty difficult. But yeah, no, recording it just straight up would be the most human it could possibly get.
Yeah, I mean, robotic timing and like perfect timing does have its place, I think, and it can be made to sound good with piano. But yeah, I mean, if you arm a recording track or whatever, and then you play it on the keyboard, and it sounds better with that human element, then why not just leave it as it is?
Yeah, kind of give or take, or at least to spend a lot of, like, I'll record it and then I'll go into the computer, and then even if I have to sync up the time so that it's better, at least having the velocity of how hard you're hitting the keys is pretty helpful.
Absolutely, that does make a world of difference.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, so chimes. So what to you is special about chimes? Because you mentioned the fact that there's a guitar riff in there.
Yes. So this was this track is kind of interesting. So if I mean, a lot of my friends that I talk to on the regular know that I kind of let's just put it this way, I have thoughts about trends in electronic music. Some of them nice, some of them not.
Okay.
And one of the recent trends that's really taken off is future house. Right?
Oh,
the sort
yep.
of Takami and Oliver Heldens and those guys making essentially deep house,
Yeah.
but with slightly more
Flumy type synths.
Yeah, exactly. It's like whatever, call it whatever you want. So this track is sort of along those lines. But one thing that I missed in Future House and that I kind of regret that it doesn't have is more melodic structure to it. Like a lot of Future House tunes are just all about focusing on the deep house beat and then the Future House bass sounds and plucks and stuff like that.
Right.
And it sounds cold and kind of inhuman. So with this track, I was sort of going along the Future House line, but then I brought in, my sort of signature melodic aspects to it. So that goes with the guitar. That also goes, with pads and plucks, sort of, pounding out a chord progression.
Well, I, for one, am pretty excited, so I am going to jump into this song. This is Chimes by the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Jorts. And that was Stargazing by Jorts, the man I have with me. I am Mitchell Payne, and you are listening to 89.5 WAHS Auburn Hills. We are in the midst of a very special interview. You have taken the time out of your day to come by the office here. It's not quite an office, the station, and talk a little bit about the music that you do. And it seems like we've got a lot in common, and even Carly is here in studio with us, and I was listening to the song, and I was like, yeah, I really love those pads in the background that really help carry it in a way that I think a lot of house tracks don't. And she's like, "What are you judging the music again, Mitch?" And I was like, "It's not judging. It's just analyzing, because we were kind of talking about you just can't turn your ears off anymore."
Yeah, when you do music, and it doesn't matter what kind of music you do, but I guess especially if you're doing recording and producing, you develop a very discerning ear, and you can sort of pick up on, production pitfalls and things that are done really well, things that are done really poorly. I mean, I can immediately tell when a song has auto-tune in use. Just because you can tell
there's like an artifacting on the voice when you auto-tune it.
Exactly. Like when it's done really well, you don't know it's there. But when it's done really poorly, then it's the elephant in the room.
And I think that makes us like super self-judgmental about like our own music that we make, because even when you listen to like really good top-notch music, there's still like, maybe a couple cymbals that are just out of place, or maybe a cut that could have done a little bit better, or maybe the side chain is a little too heavy. So other people could be like, this is the best song I've ever heard. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good, but there's that one thing. So when you look back at your own music, you're like constantly dreading like, oh man, I wish I had changed this super minor thing, or I wish this was just a little bit lower. It's rough.
Yeah, it's all the little minutia of, producing and mixing that sort of, make it, just as much a science as it is an art, or just as much an art as it is a science. Yeah,
I feel like if anything, that's both.
It goes both ways for sure.
And so with the audio work in the electronic producing industry, if you sit someone down with a piano, they have those notes. So you can make an almost near infinite amount of music with that, but those are just the notes that you're given. But with electronic music, you have every piece of audio that has ever been recorded in the history of mankind. You have every possible generator that has ever been done before in the history of the universe. So how do you kind of go about figuring out, in the great expanse of stuff that you can pull from, what you specifically like the sound of, and what things you like doing compared to everything that's just available to you?
Okay, so I mean, like synthesis and sampling wise, or
yeah, because I mean, if you're limited, if you just have a piano guitar, there's only so much you can do, so you just have to figure out what chord progressions you can use and what melodies can make you stand out. But there's so much options for us. Like, is there a place where you like to pull your samples from? Are there certain sounds that you like more than others?
Yeah, so I mean, I am a bit of a sample freak. I do like, I like looking for pieces of audio that I can use, and I like recording my own audio. A couple Christmases ago, I got like a Tascam, hand digital recorder.
Yeah, I got a Tascam.
Those things are great because you can, it's like the size of, I would say a cell phone, but, maybe like 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago, cell phone.
But, you can pull those things anywhere, and they have really great recording quality. The mics on them are fantastic for how small they are. And you can record all sorts of stuff, you can pick up, rain outside your window, or you can pick up, birds chirping in a park, or you can pick up, people walking down a street, you can pick up cars during rush hour. You can go, you can record all sorts of stuff.
Record the world, yeah. And I even I picked myself up because I really wanted to kind of experiment with binaural audio, not for like ASMR weirdness. For those of you who don't know, ASMR is just YouTube videos where people will like whisper really quietly into the microphone and make weird noises, and for some people it makes them shiver, whatever. That's cool. But so I love the fact that we can detect the places of sound based on its like location in our own head. So I took a Tascam and then I got like earbuds with microphones in them and just stuck them into my ears. And so if you record it through the Tascam, then you can play that audio back and it gives you the illusion that you're actually in that space, which is super cool.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That brings an interesting point, actually. One of my buddies in Scotland, Electrolyte, who I don't know if you're familiar with.
I'll have to check them out.
We're buds on SoundCloud, yeah. His thesis at university, he actually did a study where he had, like the dummy of like a human head set up, and one condenser mic sticking out of each ear to sort of approximate the human scope of hearing. What he did is he played some records in 5.1 surround sound on a 5.1 system spaced around this dummy, and then recorded in stereo out of the microphones on the dummy's head, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his study was sort of like, does that stereo recording still properly approximate the 5.1 surround,
That'd be weird. So what was the finding?
The finding was that I think he's got like a WordPress or something up where he's posted all this stuff. But I think the finding was that there was no significant difference between the stereo and the 5.1.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what his sampling size was, but it was a decent size.
Yeah.
So
for all the neat things that we can do, are there any for those of us out there who might be kind of starting out on our own work with electronic music, or really kind of seeing what they can do, or maybe hearing this for the first time, they're like, wait, I can do this too. Oh my goodness, I want to try it. Are there any production tips or just general life tips that you can give to people who are kind of trying to make their way, I wouldn't say into the industry, but really just kind of getting music done in general, because you've been doing this for a long time. And so now with like what you're saying is your first real proud album release, what can you take from this and give back?
Yeah, so as far as composing goes, I mean, in the beginning, it really just boils down to keep going. Like, track ideas, just track ideas like all the time. I've reached the point where, like, if I really want to, I can just sort of sit down in front of the computer and just hammer something out real quick. It might not be great, but it's something. So a lot of the early on struggle comes from, producing, pulling ideas out of thin air, really, which, I think is, it's maybe not necessarily the most important skill to have, but it's good to be able to sit down and, hammer something out on the fly, composition-wise. As far as like technical skill and stuff like that, that just comes with time.
Yeah.
I think I mean, you can watch YouTube tutorials for days, but the real familiarity with having the sort of the knowledge and the wisdom to make sound and to to produce like a quality record comes from listening to a lot of records and to just doing it a lot.
Yeah, and it really seems to just be like keep at it. And something that I've always noticed, like for people, I always just say like finish as much as you possibly can. And like even if it's not super great, like put a name on it and like just call it a song, like just to make it feel a little special, especially when you're starting out. Because if you're constantly comparing yourself to like big league players, I guess you're just constantly going to feel disappointed and never want to finish anything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In music, you cannot compare yourself to other people. You cannot compare yourself to other people. You have to compare yourself to yourself. If you're improving, that's great. Like you're doing the best that you can. You can't, get into the game, compare yourself to like, Madian or
like Seven Lions or like Skrillex or something and be like, wow, I'm terrible at this.
No, yeah.
Because I guarantee you they did not start out being amazing at this either.
Oh no. Yeah, absolutely not.
Everybody starts out, making their album art in like Paint, and like with some like cheesy name, and then eventually people will kind of go through this reconstruction of themselves, or just deleting their old stuff. But I think it's really helpful when like I try to leave some of my super early stuff around so that people can like see like, wow, he really used to be awful and now he's just less awful. So hopefully, I mean, yeah, I'd like to see like if you have any of your like super old stuff laying around, it'd be kind of interesting to see. For comparison, I might do a little spot on it for the pendulum. It'd be, I love doing before and afters for artists to kind of like track their journey through music.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've got some of my older stuff on SoundCloud. Some of, I mean, some of the older material that wasn't too popular I've taken down, but I mean, that's just a matter of, I mean, there's no real point in keeping it there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do have, a lot of older material up on SoundCloud, so you can go check it out there.
And that reminds me, I remember I thought it was super duper awesome. You actually got featured on a label thing, the Artist Intelligence Agency.
Yeah, that is the tune I did with Electrolyte.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting story. I did a lot of remix contests early on, and what happened was he was holding one for one of his tunes, and I pounded out a really sweet electro house track that he really liked. So what happened was I won the contest, and what happened was as a result we we decided, hey, let's work on a track together. And so what happened was the result was he found a vocalist for us.
Oh, wow.
And then we all worked on the tune, and the result was Try Not to Fall, which was featured on Artist Intelligence Agency, formerly EDM.com, I think.
They kind of went through
some
a
rebranding.
thing.
But yeah, the track was released on a compilation album by a label called Color Bridge, which I think is sort of dying or dead, which is unfortunate. It seemed like a cool bunch of dudes, but
Yeah.
it was just neat to have a song put out. It was like one of my first serious collaborations with someone like
Right.
way outside my realm. I mean, he lives in Scotland, so
Yeah, it's a little far. But I guess that's the beauty of electronic music is we're all technically savvy, so we know how to make it work over long distances.
Oh yeah,
can figure it out.
Dropbox and Google Drive, whatever you want to use. Pick your poison.
Pretty much. Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna jump into another song here. This is one that kind of caught my ear earlier, and I wanted to play it. Do you have anything to say about it before we just jump in?
Yeah. So this track is Longing, and this is an interesting story because this track, start to finish, took I think 4 hours.
Oh,
it was really quick.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sort of distinctive, piano part, where it was sort of like I just pulled up a chair to the keyboard and was sort of messing around, and I sort of accidentally, brought out this very sweet melody, very sweet chord progression. And I thought, you know what? I can build like a sort of deep progressive house track around that, and this was the result.
Well, without further ado, let's jump into this song that you have made. This is Longing by Jorts. I don't know about you, but I am longing for some more of this music.
Nice one.
Yeah, that song was Longing by the very special gentleman we have here in studio, Jorts. Hello again.
Hello again.
We've been talking already for like an hour, but it's been a blast really being able to talk to someone about all the technical stuff that I love and learning some stuff along the way. It's been super cool.
It's very good to be here.
Mm-hmm. So along the way with all of this stuff, I mean, because when I made a song recently called Alteration, it was taking a whole bunch of sampling from stuff that I've done in the radio and just kind of memifying it into like this silly sounding song. And you were talking about how one of the trends that you didn't like was the future word almost, because at first it was just you didn't like future house, but then you also said immediately after the other trend that I don't really like is future bass. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that trend.
Yeah, so the word future, it's like progressive. It's
Yeah.
like a pretty pretentious word to begin with. So like, if you're making something and you're calling it like progressive,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be like making you like, fly or like,
Yeah.
see in the dark or something like that. But yeah, I mean, future, I have no idea why people call it future bass, future house, future garage, anything like that.
Because like the characteristics of house is still like that steady just beat, I guess. I mean, there's like, and yeah, like future house. I mean, there are those house elements, but I don't know about future bass. I don't know where the future came from. I guess somebody just did it and they thought it was kind of new, and so maybe they just called it that, and then somehow it became a genre really quickly.
It's paradoxical though, because people are making it today. There's nothing future about it.
And now there's old future house
Yeah.
and old future bass.
Do we call it past house?
Yeah, or is it just bass now? It's no longer future now. It's
Yeah,
just
it's contemporary bass.
contemporary. I really wish they would have called it that instead. I guess it's we're always in the future. I mean, electronic music is still, I wouldn't say it's like super popular and well accepted, but I think it's definitely more ingrained into the modern day now, because we're still riding off of a lot of 80s 90s. I mean, the fact that making a whole song in a computer and not through actual instruments and amplifiers and everything is still I think a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. What was like your experience, I guess, even like socially wise, because you were doing this throughout high school, and now I suppose in the education that you're in, it might be a little bit more welcome. But how did you feel about the social aspect of the fact that it's like you were a producer, or as I said it slightly before, a broducer? How was that experience for you?
Like I said, I had I had a couple of producer friends throughout high school, and that was really great socially, because you can just email tracks back and forth, bounce ideas, collaborate, just be like, hey, you want to come over and work on a track? Oh yeah, sure. Very easy to sort of get into that mode where it's very comfortable and everyone's cool with each other. These days at the university level, I don't really have that anymore, unfortunately. There's no like, producer clubs or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I never really felt like I wanted to go through the effort to get one started.
Yeah.
I think the one highlight is that I ran past a dude who was using a MacBook that had an Ableton sticker on it.
Oh, nice.
So I walked up to him and I'm like, Ableton's the best, start, going on about that.
Yeah, every time I see someone, like even like having like a picture of something about FL Studio up, I just have to like run in there and interject and be like, oh, hey, that's my software. Like, you do stuff, I do stuff. We should follow me on SoundCloud, dude.
Yeah, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Yeah, the follow for follow thing that SoundCloud definitely is not the biggest fan of, because SoundCloud, has been plagued with bots for the longest time.
Tell me about it.
And people who will follow you for like a week and then they will immediately unfollow you in just the hopes that during that week you hit the follow back button.
Yeah.
So that's how they kind of accrue followers. So yeah, how do you get your music out there into the world? I mean, right now, obviously, you're on a radio station talking about the music you got coming up. But other than that, how do you really how do you get it from just a file on your computer out into the world?
As far as promotion wise, that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
what I do is, I'll get it up on SoundCloud, and I've got a Facebook and a Twitter. Much as I don't really care for social media these days, but I mean, it's kind of almost necessary, but it doesn't bother me all that much.
Yeah.
I like to share my music then with different circles, honestly. So like, I'll go put stuff on Reddit. I'll go, onto like production forums and stuff like that, and sort of, self promote a little bit. Just sort of getting it out there casually. I'm not like, going after YouTube channels or anything like that.
Trying to hunt them down, get them to put in their music there. I remember I'd like tried creating like a group of trying to like promote the sharing of music, but on SoundCloud and I think in a lot of places it becomes so stale with. I mean, it's not that self-promotion is like a bad thing. Like, I don't think so at all. But the fact it's like no one's like will actually listen to other people's music. So it's like there's a whole bunch of people like throwing their song in the bucket, and then no one actually taking anything out of the bucket to look at it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really hard to kind of rally people in that way. And I think for me, that's how labels still kind of have their place. Because, back in the day when you got, like, signed by a label, because they heard you on the radio, I mean, that was, like, an amazing thing. You're like, oh, I've made it. I'm famous now. And you can still really get into the world of electronic music without ever having anything to do with a label. A lot of people don't want it. I don't really want it. But I know that there are certain labels, like Monster Cat's a famous one. There's, like, Never Say Die. Those are the ones, yeah. That's what I hate. Yeah, when everyone says like, "Yeah, I listen to electronic music," it's just like, "Do you know Monster Cat?" And I'm like, "Yes, everybody knows Monster Cat."
Here's the problem today. I mean, this is it really comes with the times, with the technology, really. Because I mean, back in the day, you signed with a label basically in order to get someone to cover the funding of pressing your records. That was pretty much it. Like. And then, getting stuff on the radio, like distribution and pressing records, pretty much. These days, we have the internet. We have digital music. So, I mean, there's no real need to press records or burn CDs even. And distribution is something that, you might not be successful at it on your own, but you can certainly do it. I mean, no one really joins a label for the purposes that they used to, you know?
No, I think it's just, I mean, mostly labels now are just kind of that promotional opportunity of like, hey, I have 100 followers, he has 1,000 followers, I'm going to try and get my thing on his thing and, hopefully kind of spread that a little bit. And I think they do, labels in general kind of help with that genre feel, because there are some labels I know if I go to, I'm like, okay, they're just going to have a bunch of dubstep music, so I can check in now and then to see if there's anything interesting. And it does help me find other artists who have submitted stuff there, but I don't particularly want to deal with all the, like you said earlier, the red tape of labels in that industry.
Yeah, I mean, all my stuff that I've done up to this point has been free, and the album even is on the pay what you want model, so you can grab it for free if you like, or toss a couple bucks my way. I don't care. I mean, for me, it's never been about the money. It's just sharing music. And the thing about labels is that there's such huge, like, monolithic, like, the music industry is just, I don't know, it's just fishy to me,
Yeah.
It's like everyone's out, everyone's objective is the almighty dollar, right? It's same as it is anywhere. But I mean, the other thing is all these, these days anyone can start a label, and I'm putting quotation marks on my fingers because I mean, you can start a label putting out, any kind of music that you want to, but the the existing labels, the existing giant corporate cash cows.
Yeah.
They already have, promotion and distribution and all that stuff on their channels. And still lots of small artists, small, YouTube channels, whatever, are popping up as labels, and I don't really understand why.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when because if you go onto like some famous track and then there's like a comment that says reposted on the something obscure name label, and it's a label with like 27 followers, and it's just got like this weird title, and I feel like it's almost impossible to really try to start anything like that anymore. There's like the giants, there's like the Monster Cat, there's the intelligence agency, which has like 50,000 mini labels, and
one for every genre.
Yeah, and all those things like that. And at this point, I think it's I don't know how people get popular anymore, because there's just always more people. I mean, there's just so many producers. It's like, how do you set yourself apart, I think, is like the biggest challenge.
Yeah, the market is flooded, but that's artist wise, and it's also label wise, kind of. You could almost say that there's probably like a label out there for every, I don't know, maybe 5, maybe 10 producers, maybe more, maybe less.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
But I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it's like all the new labels popping up, all the small guys, they're all like, some of them are doing creative stuff, but a lot of them aren't, Like, one of the things that I think is a real shame is that a lot of labels focus on one genre, and they sort of, they lock onto one genre or one style, and they say, this is what we do. But, maybe you've got guys like me or you who like to dabble in a whole bunch of different styles, right? It's almost like we're liberated, right? We're not bound by one style. Yeah, we have the sort of ability to just go in whatever direction that we want, and that's something I like to do. It's something you like to do. But when you come to the point where you want to put out an album and it's got so many different styles on it, and then no one says, we represent all kinds of music, but
right,
but they really don't.
We represent a whole bunch of different artists in like one pseudo subgenre. But I feel like that's like the eternal back and forth of making music, for the people who are pursuing the dollar. If I want to make money, I have to make music that makes money. And the music that makes money is the really popular stuff. So I have to make something popular, which means I have to do the same thing that everyone else in the history of mankind has ever done, and make another big room house track and call it a day. And that's... it just makes me sad, I suppose, that there's like a loss for room for that artistic and the new things, because even if it's good, if it just catches people off guard, if a label's like, I don't really know what to do with this, we don't have the room for this, then there's no way for you to really get it out there. And it's like, if you say to yourself, I just want to do this as an artsy thing, you almost have to just... you have to say to yourself, I don't ever expect to actually get super popular, just because that's like the stagnation of the situation.
That is the Western music scene, unfortunately, as it is. It's everyone grabbing onto the, Joe Smith, EDM, trendy, future progressive, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, you should change your name. Just take out the vowel and then put the rest of the letters in all caps.
Yeah, no,
like every producer ever.
Yeah, you write a producer name. You replace the A's with capital V's.
V's.
All the letters are capital. You put in maybe a couple of numbers or something where there should be letters.
And put a little alien emoticon in there. So just become like, instead of nightmare, just night, and then there's like an alien thing on there.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's a struggle.
It is. Sometimes the music industry just looks like a parody of itself, I mean, I don't think of Jorts as a particularly, out there name.
Yeah, I think it's catchy. I think it's nice.
I mean, you can say it's silly, but I mean, is it any more silly than Skrillex?
Yeah.
Dodge and Fusky? Hello.
Mord Fustang.
Yeah. Like, there are all kinds of crazy names out there, but people take them seriously, so.
Yeah. I mean, if the music's good, I guess people will take your name for it then, and that is what it is.
That's what I certainly hope. I hope people can,
Mm-hmm.
I hope people look past the aesthetics of,
Other
of
stuff.
things and just focus on the music.
Yeah.
That's what it's meant to be, man.
Yeah, and even like to the point of where making album art almost becomes difficult because when you're scrolling down your SoundCloud, and you see an image that's like strikes out to you as being like, whoa, that's a super cool looking fractal. I'm gonna listen to that song because you only have so much attention span of people. So like I hate when I have to like sit down and try and make an album art thing because I don't want it to be super cheesy or like cartoony but you don't want to just take a picture of something and just grayscale it like a lot of people like. So for like what like this album, I haven't seen any kind of album art for this. So like
you
what?
haven't?
No. So what direction did you take that?
Oh, it's busy. It's busy. It's busy and it's abstract. It's very, very busy. That's the best word that I can say. There's sort of symbols and colors all over the place. Really, it sort of goes along with the almost kind of mathematical theme of the album. So,
Well, I'll have to check that out. I'll have to see. Once that comes out on Bandcamp, I can give that a look over. That'll be pretty fun. Well, that is going to have to conclude our interview for today because even though I spend most of my day here in the radio studio, do actually have 1 or 2 classes I actually have to attend to. So unfortunately, that's going to do it in for us. I am going to leave this on one more song, though. So speaking of names, this has an interesting name if you want to quickly go over this for us.
Yeah, so this track is called 4092, and the name comes from a sort of quip back and forth with a friend of mine who was really into future bass. And future bass, like future house, is a sort of a weird trend that I don't really care for, It's sort of like, it's like 1 or 2 guys, Wave Racer or whatever, they make these tracks and they sound, very bubblegum, jazzy chord progressions, and it's like trappy, but, and then a lot of the songs are kind of cookie cutter along those lines.
Yeah.
So my goal with this track was to sort of create, almost... It started out as sort of like a parody of the future bass genre, but then it sort of evolved into its own, kind of weird style. So it switches genres a couple times. It's very, complex or whatever. But the name sort of comes from, a quote that I said to my friend. I said, if other people's future bass is coming from like 2050, then my future bass is going to come from like 4092.
4092.
So this is pretty far in the future.
Yeah. Well, it all comes together. I am pretty excited. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. This is 4092 by Jorts. Well, as much as that may have been inspired by a meme, I still liked it. I liked it.
It was quite a roller coaster to work on that track. Trust me.
Still got all those glitchy choppy sampley things in there, and I almost choked on my drink here when I heard the air horn come out. Love the air horn.
Yep, the air horn and the furniture squeak. Very much a staple of the genre.
Mm-hmm. Where was the Prida snares? I missed out.
Oh, see, that would be in a big room track though.
True. Yeah, I can't. Well, you'll have to do one of those at some point. Anyway, this is gonna have to conclude our interview. I'm Mitchell Payne, and you are
Jorts, Jason Medcoff.
And of course, where can people find you on like Facebook and Twitter?
Absolutely. So Facebook, Twitter, and SoundCloud .com/JortsWubs.
Jorts Wubs with an S?
With an S.
Not a Z, as I might have guessed. And then your music will be coming out when?
Friday, June 2nd is the planned release date for the album. That's 1 week from today, on Friday.
Yeah, and that'll be on Bandcamp, and I'm sure like the moment you release it on SoundCloud, I'll have to repost a whole bunch of that. And it'll be great, and we can see that legendary album art. That's very busy, apparently.
Absolutely. So the crossfade preview of all the tracks in the album is already on SoundCloud, as a matter of fact. So, if you want to catch another preview of the tunes before they come out, you can go and find it there. It's like an 8-minute long, crossfade, just a couple minutes out of each track, just to sort of give a sampling. Mm-hmm. All the details about my social media and the release website, the Bandcamp, everything is in the description of that track, so you can find it there.
Sweet. And we'll be talking about it a little bit on Facebook, I'm sure. Anyway, we're going to be turning you back over to the good old music on 89.5 WAHS. Is there anything you want to say before we head out here?
Well, thank you personally, Mitchell, for having me on the show. I'm very grateful. Always, very good to talk to you. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's been really nice instead of what I always feel like I have to be doing, and not have to, like I enjoy it, but I love like the teaching aspect and being able to take our knowledge and kind of share with it. But it was really nice being able to yell at things together for a little while and explore the trends in a way that you understand me. So no, it's been great.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again.
Yep. Well, until next time, you're listening to 89.5 WAHS Auburn Hills. See you later.
Signing off.